is your video tour of the veins. Alright, so we're going to start up here. Now, when we did the video tour of the arteries, I started at the heart and worked my way out. With the veins, I'm going to start out and work my way back towards the heart. Any guesses on why I might be doing that? Well, if you're thinking that it's because veins carry blood back to the heart, you would be correct. So let's start with the superficial temporal vein. That should be pretty easy because it follows the superficial temporal artery, and you're going to notice that about many of the veins, which would mean that this is the facial vein. The facial vein and the superficial temporal vein merge together to form this big vein in the neck, which is the jugular vein. And I believe on the coloring sheet it says the external jugular, so we'll go with that. The external jugular vein merges with this vein, which we'll get back to in a second, but you probably know already it's the subclavian vein. But you have the merging of the jugular vein and the subclavian vein to form, just right here would be the superior vena cava, because then as it gets closer, I'm sorry, that was incorrect. This is the brachiocephalic vein. So then as it gets closer to the heart, and you can see it hopefully back in there, that is the superior vena cava, which carries blood back to the right atrium, which you can't see because it's on the inside there. All right, so now let's go with the arm. Start at our fingers and work our way back. So the digital veins are the veins on the fingers, which I think is pretty straightforward. The loop on the back of the hand would be the dorsal network, dorsal venous network. And then, as you can see, the veins start going up the forearm, but then they curl around, very much like the nerves did, and come to the front of the arm. But they still are going, there's one vein that stays on the medial side of the arm, and there's one vein that stays on the lateral side of the arm. Now, there is such a thing as an ulnar vein and a radial vein, but these are not it. This vein that's on the medial side of the arm is the basilic vein, and the vein that's on the lateral side of the arm is the cephalic vein. And then this vein right here that crosses between them is the median cubital vein. Now, right here, the median cubital vein, the basilic vein, and the cephalic vein, when you go to have blood drawn at the doctor's, these are the veins that they use. They don't want to put a needle into an artery because the pressure in your radial and ulnar arteries right there is so high that it would blow the needle right out and you would bleed profusely, and that would be bad. So the basilic vein and the cephalic vein, as they come up towards the shoulder, merge together, and the vein that goes through here, just like the artery, would be the axillary vein. The axillary vein becomes the subclavian vein. The subclavian vein merges with the external jugular to become the brachiocephalic vein, and then the superior vena cava. So that takes care of the arm. So let's go now to the gluteal region. Don't think you need too much of a reminder. Superior gluteal, inferior gluteal. Both of the gluteal veins come through the pelvic region, and they join with the vein that goes through this really big hole. Did a fake and break right there. That would be the biggest hole in the body, in the skeletal system. That's the obturator vein. So the obturator vein and the gluteal veins merge together to form the internal iliac. And we'll get back to that in just a second. Now we'll go to the feet. Digital veins on the toes. Dorsal network, that loop on the top of the foot. Then, the medial side of this loop goes up the leg, past the knee, goes all the way up, and it ends up joining with the femoral vein all the way up here. This vein that goes the entire length of the medial side of the leg, from the dorsal venous network all the way up on the medial side, that is the great saphenous vein. In this case, great refers to biggest, longest. Off the other side of the dorsal venous network, the other side of the loop, this vein also starts going up, but on the lateral side of the leg, and it joins the femoral vein just above the popliteal region. This vein that's on the lateral side of the leg, starting at the dorsal network and coming up the lateral side to just above the popliteal region, that is the small saphenous, small meaning shorter. Down here at the ankle, you have the medial plantar vein and the lateral plantar vein. The two plantar veins fuse together to form the posterior tibial vein, which comes up here to the popliteal vein, that part that's right at the back of the leg, or back of the knee. And we also have an anterior tibial vein that starts here and goes up, goes between the tibia and the fibula, That's what this little fake and break section is right there, showing the anterior tibial vein coming up, joining with the posterior tibial vein, becoming the popliteal vein, and then merging with the small saphenous to become the femoral vein. I do want to point out one thing about the anterior tibial vein, if I can not knock Chad over. It looks as though the anterior tibial vein appears out of nowhere. That is not true. I told you before that arteries and veins, blood vessels, nerves, whatever, they cannot appear out of nowhere and they cannot disappear into nowhere. What this is showing is that smaller veins that would have been along the tarsals and the metatarsals are joining together to form this bigger anterior tibial vein and then coming up from there. So it's not that the anterior tibial vein is appearing out of nowhere. Just wanted to make sure that was clear before we move on. So, once again, we have the small saphenous, the anterior tibial, and the posterior tibial, all fusing together. Here's the popliteal, so anterior and posterior tibial fuse together to form the popliteal vein. The popliteal vein and the small saphenous fuse together to form the femoral vein. And if you watch this, the femoral vein, as I said a minute ago, the femoral vein comes up through here, joins with the great saphenous, just about at the coxal bone. I guess it's right there. And then once the femoral vein gets to the coxal bone, this section right here is going to be the external iliac. Now, you can see right here, remember I said this is the internal iliac, so this is the external iliac. So the external iliac and the internal iliac fuse together to form this section right here, which is going to be the common iliac, and that is consistent with what we learned about the arteries last week. So this is the common iliac that goes to the right side, or comes from the right side. This is the common iliac that comes from the left side. Both of the common iliacs fuse together to form the inferior vena cava, which then also goes up to the right atrium. So that is a tour of the veins. Please watch multiple times if you need to. Because we will be having a quiz on this just like we've been having a quiz on other things. Hope you enjoyed. Hope it wasn't too shaky, and I'll see you next time.